So I'm here today with Melissa Lonnecker, who is a physician's assistant. I have known her for, 10 or 12 years.
At least 12.
Yeah. I probably talk to her close to every day. We work very closely and consult with one another. I have a lot of respect for her, and I'm really glad that she agreed to come here and talk with me today. Melissa,
Yes.
you're a PA.
Yes.
You guys just received a legal change to your license status, so you can practice independently. Yeah.
Yes. That happened this year. Well, I guess a year ago. I think it came through in March. And
it's about time. I mean,
yeah.
I've always told patients, don't you dare judge the quality of a practitioner by what those initials are after their name. It's all about experience and how much you work at it. And you do work at it full time. It's what you do now. And I've seen your practice change a lot over that 12 years that I've known you. Used to be a lot of primary care patients, and so it's evolved and kind of morphed into, I don't know, would you say mostly hormone? How would you describe your practice now?
So I would say that my practice is hormones, it's wellness, and it's precision healthcare.
What does that mean, precision?
Precision means that I'm really taking the individual into account, and I'm able to give them precise recommendations rather than just everybody one size fits all.
Okay. And what motivated this transformation from sort of conventional primary practice to what you're doing?
So it's kind of interesting because I did not know that what I do now existed back then. So I got into medicine, and I really don't think I knew what I was getting into because I didn't go to the doctor as a child. And so I really thought that medicine was what I do, and it really just wasn't. And it was, I knew that I wanted to start out in family practice because I wanted a good spectrum. I wanted to kind of know a little bit about everything and make sure that I understood all of the body systems. And the further I got into it, the more I was like, this is not really what I want to be practicing. And I began doing what is called functional medicine just in my family practice.
So what were some of those things that made you think, this is not what I want to be doing?
I think just treating with medications, but not getting to the root of the problem, not fixing the problem.
Which was the model that you were taught?
Yes. So I was taught a pharmacologic model, right? That for every ill, there's a pill. And it was not satisfying to me. And neither was the time constraint and the insurance model. It just was not conducive to how my personality is. I was not enjoying medicine.
Okay. So I guess that kind of answers my next question as to how you would measure your professional, your job satisfaction, your professional fulfillment.
I think my fulfillment is watching people transform and them coming to me and saying, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. And even things like, and not to put down other medicine, because we all have our strengths, and we there's a place for all of it, right? But for them to say things like, I have been looking for this answer for so long and nobody's been able to help me. And this is actually really helping me. That's really important. I think when you're asking like job satisfaction, I think being able to spend the time with my patients, being able to get to the root of their problems and help problem solve and come up with those solutions, that's really satisfying for me. I am not a 3 minutes in and out type of a practitioner. I can't do that. Yeah. It's not how I'm wired. And even when I was in family practice, I was never good at that.
And yet that's how the model really makes you practice, yep. Right? If you're going to make any money at it or have a successful practice, not that we're all after money, but we have to survive, and you have to have a practice that sustains itself.
Right.
One thing that I don't know, one word that I've kind of come to not like a lot is the word protocol. And I find medicine is so much so protocol driven,
Yes.
meaning someone else has put a plan together, and you just have to find that right plan and plug your patient into which one they fit into.
Mm-hmm.
Especially during COVID, I feel like, my goodness, outside forces have come into medicine and said, this is how you will treat this.
Mm-hmm.
And taken away, it's like taking away your brain.
Yes.
Someone comes to you as your patient, and they expect you to, I think, they would expect you to give them what is going to work for them.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't always fit. Is that?
Right. So a perfect example. I went to a doctor with my husband last night, and he literally spent maybe 4 minutes with us. And I actually really like this doctor, and I go to him because I like him. But he is a protocol machine.
Do you like him personally?
I like him personally.
Mm-hmm.
And he will ask a question, and depending on your answer, he goes down his little protocol. And I can see it in his brain. That's what's happening. And you get 3 or 4 minutes, and you're done. And I just can't practice like that. He does a pretty good job the way he does it, but I have, a lot of patients don't really appreciate that kind of approach.
Your kind or the other?
His.
His, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think they come out lacking, lacking maybe results and confidence that it's going to be any different for them. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just, I have really become disillusioned and with the way medicine has, or not medicine, the way, I guess maybe government or maybe professional associations, how they have come in and taken away your ability to reason and think and problem solve.
Right. I think it's the same even in schools, the same with teachers. Everything is so by the book, this is how you have to do it, that there's not critical thinking out there. There's a lot of lack of critical thinking skills. My mom passed away about 1.5 years ago, and going through her illness with her for those last several months, I was dumbfounded at the lack of critical thinking skills that were out there in the medical community here in Salt Lake. I was like, we are at the biggest places here with the specialists, and there was so much of a lack of critical thinking that I was like, do you not know how to think? And I don't mean that mean. I don't want to be mean, but it was so frustrating.
Well, it is frustrating, and I hear it a lot also in patients, and myself included. When I was in the hospital last, I take my supplements in, and they want to see everything you have so that they can provide it from their pharmacy, and we don't do that. We don't have that. We don't do that.
Right.
And I wanted to say, well, I do it.
I sneak it in my purse. I take my own in.
Okay, so somehow this led you to do more and more hormones.
Yes.
So tell me about that. How do you approach a new patient when they come in and sit down and say, "Okay, Melissa, here I am." Where do you start, and why hormones?
Thankfully, I think my staff starts. They have the conversations on the phone that explain what some of it is, but. So I usually start off by discussing why I am different and why I'm going to spend so much time with them, and so I just let them know that I am working on their wellness. I'm looking at the things that are not functioning properly. I am looking at a very holistic view of their lab work and their history and their physical, and I'm talking about their family history, and we're going to go through all of that and all of your symptoms. I'm going to get it all down on paper on my computer, and we're going to discuss it, and we're going to put these puzzle pieces together, and it's going to take us some time today. My first visit with my patients is 2 hours.
Oh my goodness.
And then typically after that, it's somewhere between 30 and 60 minutes a visit.
You are out of step.
so that I can hear what is actually happening, how they're feeling, how it's going.
Do most of them come to you knowing that they need hormones, or maybe if they've been referred by somebody else or they've spoken with another patient, maybe so, or do they just come with a problem often?
It's kind of a mix of both. I thought that when I started going into hormones that I was going to see a lot of menopausal women, and that has not been the case. I do have plenty of menopausal women, but I also have several men that do come specifically for hormones. Sometimes they are coming for thyroid, which people forget about, But and then I also get a lot of referrals for my best friend's doctor is not listening to her. Can she come see you? And so then we're kind of troubleshooting and trying to see what it is. So, I would say 90% of my patients are on one hormone or another. Some of it is just the, nutritional supplements or even sometimes some medication, but it's just trying to get to the bottom of whatever is going on.
Yeah, I don't want to make this sound like hormone is the answer to everything that you deal with. I think you've laid it out pretty clearly that you respond really to what's going on. And oftentimes that's a problem that isn't getting fixed, right? And their doctor is either not able to get to the bottom of it or isn't listening. And I hear that a lot too. A lot of people come in here and they say, listen, I've done some research of my own, and you know what? There's never been a better time for people to do their own research.
Yep.
The information availability is just huge now. And so they've done that, but the doctor says, I'm not going to do that, or I won't do that. So you get them.
Or I don't do that.
Why do you suppose they don't? Yeah, I don't do that. Why do you suppose there seems to be just a chasm in between where they just won't cross into that? Is this...
It's because
Are we
they
just
don't
getting
know
back to
how.
that protocol-driven medicine?
Yes, it's because they don't know how. In my experience...
So why won't they say I don't know how rather than don't do that? It's not...
Because of the Women's Health Initiative, that's why.
That's a study that was done...
21 years ago.
Yeah, 21 years ago. And
right
done
as I was graduating. That's why I know.
Kind of poorly, yeah. And the results that they took from it, they extrapolated far beyond what they had any right to. And it cast a dark shadow on hormone therapy as a whole.
As a whole. And so the media, I remember, I was just brand new out of school. And I was at my mom's house and the 6 o'clock national news came on. And what we saw happen in the first months of COVID is what happened with the Women's Health Initiative. And what it was a poorly done study that was not using bioidentical hormones. It was using horse estrogen, and it was using a synthetic derivative of progesterone, which is not the same as, progestin, which is what they were using. And it didn't even go that badly, honestly. There was a little slightly statistically significant change in like 30 out of 10,000 women that had some extra side effects. And so the news, the media is what shut it down. And it put the fear into every practitioner and every patient in the United States of America that hormones were going to kill them. And everybody had to get off their hormones. And for a whole year, which happened to be the first year I was in practice, nobody could get hormones. And I was in a family practice, and I had women coming to me and begging me to get them their hormones back. And I'm like, well, I don't do that. I don't know how to do hormones because they do
You
not
said, I don't
teach
do
it in
that.
school. Yes, I said, I don't know how to do that. Go see your gynecologist. And they would come back and they'd be crying and they'd be like, I can't live without these. And my gynecologist doesn't do hormones.
So you understand doctors saying that?
Yes, because I was not taught. And I literally had a patient hand me a pamphlet, and she said, oh, before I get to that, I want to say 1 year, no direction other than get everybody off their hormones. The second year, if they must have them, give them Prozac. That was their solution. That was the solution from the higher ups in the medicine protocols, right? And who makes up all the rules for what you do, right? So the second year was Prozac, and then they're like, okay, if you must give them to them, give them the lowest dose possible and get them off as quick as possible. And that still stands today. That is still the direction that is coming from the American College of Gynecology, Obstetrics, and Endocrinology. That is what they say is do the lowest dose possible, get them off as soon as possible. Even though that badly done study showed that the longer they were on it, the more health benefits they had. Okay. So it's direct contraindication from what really happened. But what really happened there was the media got a hold of it and it exploded and it just freaked everybody out and everybody stepped back. So years into that, I had a patient hand me a pamphlet and she said, "There are other ways to do this. Will you please go learn?" And I looked at the pamphlet and there was a conference coming to Salt Lake and I went and I was like, why are we not doing this? This is so logical, and it is very logical. It is very pretty simple. It's not really rocket science. It really is not. Women are complicated. We are complicated, right? But for me, it makes really perfect sense. I understand it really well. And it is so much easier than just giving somebody Prozac.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
I like to say that the hormone system, the endocrine system it's not complicated. It's ingenious, is what it is.
It is ingenious.
And it works very well together. But when we step in and don't know what we're doing and intervene with the wrong things, which are motivated generally by, and I hate to say it, but they're motivated by money often, what drug companies can patent.
Right.
If you don't think that drives the direction of medicine, you need to do a little studying and look around and see why things are perpetuated that aren't working.
Right.
Like you just said. You ask yourself, why aren't we doing this? Well, that's one of the reasons why we're not doing this, is because there are forces at work that are extremely strong in different directions, and they will not let go lightly.
Oh.
If at all.
It's going to be a bloodbath, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So you find yourself pushing against the establishment.
Yes.
With this.
I remember sitting in my exam room in my family practice. I was sitting there and I was miserable. And I'm like, why am I doing this? This does not bring me happiness or satisfaction. And I literally had this enlightened moment where it was like, there are enough practitioners that do this. I'm going to go do this other thing. And I literally just went and did the other thing.
Well, I think that's courageous.
Yeah, it was. It took me about 6 months to make the transition because I was really nervous to do it because you were the only person I could talk to about it. I didn't have a single doctor. I didn't have a single other practitioner that knew how to do it. And for me, I was like, why? This is not that hard. It is really logical. And the reason I found you was because I was so frustrated that I couldn't find answers from anybody else. And I was swimming in the deep end. And sometimes I was like, well, what do you think? How can I tweak this, And I had to use my critical thinking skills and nobody else could with me. And so I was like, who do I go to? And thankfully you showed up. And I was like, oh, he knows what I'm talking about. That's how we became good friends.
It's true. I mean, and there are thousands others like us who have found this same or discovered this same thing,
right?
And they realize that, oh my goodness, this is what I need to do and want to do. But it does take courage to break away, because it is breaking away.
It is breaking away.
And in many cases, it's a threat to your
It is.
Your livelihood.
And I had to tell myself it is okay if I get in trouble for this, I guess I get in trouble. But this is what I was meant to do. This is what I was born to do. And this is what I'm going to do. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, I guess I'll do something else.
Okay, well, I wanted to kind of touch on that because it is important to understand, for women and men to understand, why they're going to run into resistance with this, and why it will be portrayed to be fringe medicine, or I know some of them reject it so out of hand that patients just think there must be something terribly wrong with this, the reaction that I just got.
Right.
So anyway, so let's go into a little bit of detail about, so why is it so important? What are some of the main things that it does for? Let's just stay with women. It's hard to, I mean, because it's different for men, but the same things apply in many cases. But what is it that really makes a difference for them with this, and what draws them to it?
So like I said, when I got started, I thought it was going to be menopause, and it was not. It was PMS, and it was heavy menstrual cycles. It was irregular, painful, heavy menstrual cycles.
And so what age range was that coming to?
Like in the 30s.
Oh, wow.
Maybe later 30s, earlier 40s. And so it was anxiety, it was insomnia, it was I'm bleeding to death. And I was really like, thankfully, I was in the same stage of life, and so I understood. You know, I was going through it with my patients. So the benefits, to that age, to that particular age, between about 35 and 50, it markedly reduces the complications that they're having with their cycle. It markedly changes the whole entire dynamic of PMS, which is huge. Yeah. You know, some women really have premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is like classified as a mental illness because it's so bad. And it's just a little tweak of the hormones that can fix that, you know?
That we have just kind of referred to as PMS, all under the umbrella of PMS, right?
There's PMS, which can be, a variable stage, but premenstrual dysphoric disorder is way worse. And the traditional way to treat that is through psychiatric medications. And I'm like, this is not a psychiatric problem. This is a hormonal imbalance. And it's actually really easy to fix, I can't make your body fix it, but I know what to do to help augment what your body is not doing right.
I got to tell you, I think I've told you this before. I came across this psychiatrist who told me, and this is a bit of a reverse of what you just said. He told me, after what I have learned, I will not start a patient on any psychotropic drug, any kind of psychiatric drug, until I know their hormones are where they need to be.
Right.
And I thought, oh my gosh, the light has shined through.
Right.
That's...
You know what? And I will tell you that the practice that I've been at for the last decade, that's how it got started, was the practice owner's mom, her psychiatrist, said, you need hormones. And she went and figured out hormones and told her son, hormones are the wave of the future. Let's do this, and he totally took it and ran with it.
I've always thought, what a terrible thing to pile onto a woman after she realizes she's in menopause. And oh, by the way, you're kind of nuts too.
Right.
Nobody needs to hear that.
Right.
As a sort of a default. Really?
Right.
At this age,
right.
Never had any issues with that before. Now you're telling me I need psychiatric help?
Right.
It's depressing.
Right. Yeah. They're not sleeping well because they don't have hormones. They have way more anxiety because they're missing a crucial hormone that helps reduce anxiety, So there's a lot that goes on in menopause and going through menopause. Like I had this conversation today with a patient. She's like, am I menopausal? I said, yes, because you had your ovaries removed. That made you menopausal. But she wanted to know what it meant to be going through menopause. And I'm like, it's not very fun. And it can go on for years and years and years, and there's ups and downs, and it can take a long time to get there, and it can be really uncomfortable. And so that's probably the stage that I see the most, is the women going into menopause, and they're struggling with those hormonal changes that happen typically in the mid-40s, but it can be a little sooner than that. Mm-hmm. And it's a roller coaster.
Yep. And I tell women it's easily a decade-long experience before things kind of settle into a pattern again. Yeah,
a postmenopausal pattern, which means there are no hormones left, right? And so it's stable because there aren't any.
Yeah.
So that is stable, but that is not optimal. And so what I'm working at is trying to optimize their hormones.
Yeah. So, but at least it stops changing radically.
It stops going up and down all the time and all over the place, yeah.
Terrible thing to have to try and deal with. I am amazed at the strength that I see in women and what I see them trying to shoulder and just bear. When really there's relief for it, and like you said, I see it earlier and earlier. Mm-hmm. in women. So as they move through that and get closer to their 50s, I think what I see or what I hear the most often is in complaints is fatigue. You hear that a lot?
Oh, yeah. I think fatigue is my number one symptom that people complain of.
So it's a hormonal thing? How do you respond to it? And
I have a 9 or 10 step little protocol, if we're going back to protocols, that I look for. And
call it a tailored plan.
It is a tailored plan, and I'm checking all of these areas to make sure
that you figured out with your own brain.
Right.
Yeah.
Which nobody taught me this. So it starts with sleep, but disruption of sleep in women in particular goes down as their hormones go down, right? And so hormone replacement can be a game changer for sleep, right? If somebody has sleep apnea, that is not hormonal and that has to be taken care of. And I tell them, you're never going to feel better until you get that taken care of, right? So quality of sleep is number one. Well, that's number two. Number one is quantity of sleep. Are they getting enough sleep? And a lot of people are not, right? So those first two aren't necessarily hormonal, but for women, definitely hormones can play a role, because if you're having hot flashes, if you're having night sweats, and if you're low on your hormones, you're not going to sleep well. And that's just a proven fact.
Does that respond pretty quickly?
It responds on day one. Day one, typically. Okay.
And with something that is not habit forming.
Right.
And they don't need to worry about that it's gonna whack them out. They're gonna wake up in the middle of the night and do things they don't remember.
Right.
So, yeah. So I'll see women coming to me on two things: an antidepressant and a sleeping pill.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So there's so much to going into fatigue, just stress, right? And women, I mean, bless our hearts. We've got kids, we've got careers, and we've got all of these hormonal changes, right? And it's a lot going on in these productive decades of all of the hormonal changes that you go through between the age of 20 and 50. There's a lot going on. So it's multifactorial. Fatigue is multifactorial, but definitely hormones, not to mention thyroid. And so, I mean, thyroid is a big deal for a lot of people. Their thyroid may be in the normal range, but it's not necessarily optimal. And they feel less fatigue.
It's a hormone, by the way. Thyroid is a hormone.
Thyroid is a hormone, and so are the adrenal glands. They produce hormones. And when people have burned the candle at both ends for a decade or two, a lot of times they're low on their adrenal hormones. And so all of those things can cause fatigue, Obviously, I look at nutrients as well, and I look to see if there's deficiencies or iron problems or, other problems like that. But on my list of 9 or 10, at least 5 of them are hormonal.
Okay.
And they're hormonal things that are not taught in school.
Yeah.
And I do also want to put this in there that that the studies and the data on hormones is very vast. I mean, I stopped printing when I filled up 4 4-inch binders. I'm like, this is enough proof. Okay, I'm not going to keep printing. Because we've had studies on hormones for the last 75 to 80 years.
And yet they say that there's no evidence that they're
right.
They're safe.
And that one study, that one badly done study that was not done on bioidentical hormones, that one study ruined it. And I cannot believe that we are here 21 years later still talking about that. And that
amazing.
The protocols in the upper echelons of medicine have not changed. And so when their doctors are scaring them away from it, I don't fault the doctors. They don't know. So I want people to understand that hormone replacement therapy is evidence-based. It is not, it is what I practice is not back alley, anecdotal medicine. Okay, what I practice is very evidence-based. There's 75 to 80 years of studies on all sorts of hormones, synthetic hormones, bioidentical hormones, pills, creams, shots, pellets, all sorts of studies on all sorts of hormones for all sorts of reasons, health problems, hormonal problems, all sorts of things. And so it has been tweezed out, right? We know what works and what does not work. But sadly, that one study 21 years ago blew out of the water, and because the media got such a hold of it, it just ruined it all, right? Mm-hmm. So hence, we don't learn about it in school. And so I don't fault doctors who don't know about it for saying, don't do that, because the academies above them are saying, don't do hormones. They're going to kill people, right? Get them on the lowest dose possible for the shortest duration possible, and then get them off. Even though the study said the longer they're on it, the better outcomes they have, right? Yeah. So I don't get upset. And I also will say that in the decade plus that I've been practicing in this area of medicine, it's gotten better. I have more doctors on my side. I have more doctors saying, okay, I'll let your hormone practitioner take care of that. I have less kickback from the doctors. I still do have patients come in that are upset because of what their GP told them, right? And then we have to have a heart-to-heart talk about it. But it's happening less and less. And it was really nice. In the last 5 years, probably, we've gotten letters to patients from the Huntsman Cancer Institute saying, go ahead and use these hormones. These are not causing cancer. Go ahead and keep using them. One of them was for prostate cancer. One of them was for breast cancer. And so
that's a big deal.
It is a huge deal. And so it has gotten a lot better in the last decade, where a lot of the practitioners out there are giving my patients less and less flack about it. It still happens.
Yeah, it does.
But it's way less.
Mm-hmm. And that's something. And I can say too, I've seen it. I've seen an improvement there. It's still there though, and it amazes me how adamant they can be about it.
Yeah.
I've always felt like when you're dealing with other professionals, if you disagree, it's always best to say, I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't know a lot about that area, mm-hmm. and either I'm willing to try or look into it, or else. So I'm not going to comment on it.
Right.
And that would be the bigger thing to do.
Right.
More responsible.
And the professional thing to do.
It is. It's respectful, and it serves your patient better. Mm-hmm. When you hear the evidence-based medicine it's the standard that we really all in medicine should strive for. It means that there are good studies in the literature that have been published and stood up and repeated. Mm-hmm. Others have gotten the same results, and they're out there. That's what really we should make these decisions based on. But I just hate to say it, but I wish they would think for themselves and not accept so much their professional associations if they have a position on something. Position papers. Oh, I hate them.
Right, and I'm going to say that's where precision medicine comes in, because I personally was not in a study, right? My body is different than everybody else's body, and I need somebody who can listen to me and use critical thinking skills and say, okay, well, if that dose is not working for you that I give to 98% of my other female patients, maybe we should try this dose instead, right? Which is the beauty of compounding medicine, because between you and I, we can make that happen, right?
There's that flexibility, yeah. And we see it too in the compounding pharmacy world. There's a constant battle,
right,
with the FDA. They want to control it, and they believe that we can manufacture something for everybody,
right?
And the truth is they can't. And don't you ever take away from a doctor their right to prescribe something that they think is best for their patient. Mm-hmm. That's all they need. That's all the criteria they need. It doesn't have to be approved for that. That never was a requirement in any other area of medicine. But they tend to heap that on us too. These things aren't FDA approved. Yes, they are. They are approved, and they're dispensed as in this medication that's manufactured, and this one and that one. what they're saying is the individual ingredients aren't FDA approved that we put together to make a product that actually is out there, but we have to do it in a different dose or a different form. Anyway, that's a bit of a different subject. Okay, so if you could distill this down, what would you say that the greatest benefits are, and what would you say to someone out there who is struggling? They've got some ideas of what they think they need, but how would you direct them?
I think that it's important. The more I do this, I mean, I think that there's something to be said to talking to people and listening and hearing and putting puzzle pieces together. There's also something to be said for testing and checking numbers and, seeing what the results of tests are. And I think that if they're looking, I mean, I think to educate yourself is important. I think that that's important to understand what's happening with your body. And there are a few good books out there that are helpful for that are written for the lay person, and really just consulting with somebody who knows what they're talking about. Because I will say that there are some hormone practitioners out there that don't do hormones correctly. They're not using evidence-based medicine. They're anecdotal.
So how are they going to know that? I do get that question a lot. The way I answer it is, if you're not getting results, so you need to understand, first of all, what results are, what they mean, what you can expect from this. If you're not getting that, that should lead you to a question. This is how I get around saying your doctor's wrong. I may believe that based on what I'm seeing, but I need them to know how to follow up with it and not disrespect their doctor. And in many cases, they love their doctor. They've had him for 20, 30 years. He delivered all their kids. And so if I tell them that, this is what you should be expecting from this. If you're not getting that, ask him why he or she thinks you're not.
Right.
You think that's a good approach?
I think it is a good approach because, I mean, they're going to the doctor for a reason, right? And if those reasons are not being addressed, if they're not being fixed or made better, then maybe you need a different opinion, right? Because we all do think differently, and some people are good at some things and some people are good at other things, right? I'm not good at everything. So I think that that's a really good way to go about it because, I mean, I don't know. You need to get the results that you're looking for.
You need to get the results you're looking for. And to your earlier point, there's nothing wrong with asking, what is the cause of this? What's causing this to happen? If you sense that your doctor is prescribing something to take care of a symptom, it's always a good question to say, what's causing it?
Yes.
Can we back up to that point?
I have often told my patients over the years, like if I am going to send them to a specialist, I will tell them, before you leave his office, I want you to ask, what is your diagnosis and what is your treatment plan? What do they expect you to get out of this, right? Because they'll wait for 6 months for a specialist. They'll go see him for the 7 minutes and they'll come away not knowing what just happened. And they're like, well, now what? And I'm like, well, what's your diagnosis? I have no idea. Then call your doctor and ask, what's your diagnosis?
Do they think maybe that specialist is going to contact you and let you know?
I think so sometimes. I think they think we all communicate, which does not happen.
Yeah. I tell people, you can't forget the fact that you are your medical director.
Right.
You are, if you don't do it, no one else can be expected to. Somebody else might in some cases, but don't expect it because most often it doesn't happen.
Right.
And that basic thing, you need to understand your diagnosis and what your treatment plan is. That sounds basic, and yet I agree. So many people don't get it, and they don't expect it of them. They get told what to do, and there's this trust that, I'm sorry, but it's misguided sometimes.
Right, and I'll admit it happened to us last night. We didn't get a diagnosis, and we did not get a prognosis. In that 3 minutes that we were with the doctor.
Melissa. That's frustrating, isn't it? You come away from that and don't have that information. And if you don't see change, raise your hand.
Yeah. Ask the question.
Open your mouth. And if you have to start with your pharmacist, do that.
Right. And I think that the pharmacist, in particular you, are a very great resource to help educate the patients, because there's questions. There's, what should I be expecting? What is working? What is not working? And I think that here at this pharmacy, at Mount Olympus Pharmacy, people are well trained to know how to answer these hormonal questions. And you don't always get that at the pharmacy.
Yeah, I will say that there are pharmacists that'll give a ready answer for something. But just like there are practitioners that don't practice hormone therapy correctly, there are pharmacists that don't interpret correctly.
Right. And they're looking at a protocol, right? They're looking at something out of a book or something off a screen. That's not to put them down. It's not their expertise, right? They're good at other things. If you want your hormones taken care of, it needs to be done by somebody who specializes in that.
I agree with that. And even at the pharmacy level, I think it's helpful for us to have taken a deep dive into the clinical side of it and can help support that. And you can always ask for the evidence. Do you have anything that I can look at, that I can read? Because I realize there's mountains and mountains of information out there. Very difficult to wade through it all. Yeah. You don't know who to talk to, who to go see. But a pharmacy is a good place to start. They can tell you who writes a lot of hormone prescriptions. And that's a good indicator right there.
Right.
If there are a lot of them and they're varied in their dosage forms and routes of administration, they have had some education around it. And that most pharmacies could tell you.
I think that's a good indicator. I think you hit the nail on the head, because I think that what happens sometimes is that there are practitioners out there who dabble. And dabbling isn't even always safe, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Nor is it effective.
Right. And they, in their defense, they do that because their patients are demanding it.
I know, they're trying.
They're coming to them and saying, like you said, right after the Women's Health Initiative, and they were told to get off of everything. Well, there was this outcry. Right. Women, look, I am not going to go through this with nothing. Right. So give me something. So they get put in a spot. Right. It's true. But I really wish that they would acknowledge and recognize their fellow professionals that are doing this and that know. Right. And I do think we're seeing.
I do think that that's coming along. I do. I feel like that over the last decade has really improved, where a lot more practitioners are recognizing they have not been trained in that, but they have heard through the grapevine that other people have been. And so it's not recognized, like a specific specialty.
But it's like anything else in life, when you move to a new area, you need to learn who you can trust and who you can rely on. Where's a good mechanic? Who's a good dentist? It's no different with professionals. Right. You get your network. Okay, I know this guy for urology. That's who I would send you to. And I really love it when they do that, and they have some in their pocket that they can bring out and say, okay, this person is good. Right. I will say that, I don't know, it may sound pandering, but I will tell you what I tell most patients about you, and that is I think she's the best in the valley because she does so much. And I'll send difficult cases to her. I do a lot of consulting here to help people kind of triage their symptoms. You know that, and I think it's a good screening. And then people can even order their own labs these days. So often people will come in with those and say, what do you think of these? Well, I'm not a diagnostician and I'm not licensed to do that. But I've certainly seen enough of it that I'll say this needs further attention, and I also can recognize a complicated case. Right. And those are the ones I send to you.
That's what you send to me.
I do send them to you because you see so many patients, and that's critical in any specialty. If they see a lot of patients, they're going to be experienced. They will have seen a lot of scenarios and know how to deal with them. And that's what I love about talking with you so much and consulting on all these cases, is it broadens my experience, and I get to see more, and hopefully I can pass on to you what I hear at this end too, because
and you do. We've had that good relationship for over a decade now, where I feel like I can come to you as a pharmacist and say, I don't understand this, or did you happen to go to that conference that I missed, or, Yeah. And that's a good relationship to have between a patient, a practitioner, and a pharmacist.
It is, and I love it. I appreciate it. The fact is there are many good practitioners out there that do this, and I wanted to have Melissa on here because she's an example of one of those. They're out there, and I know people have questions. Who do I go to for this, and how do I find them? So I can tell you that we know a network of hundreds, and you can be referred to one of those that is probably nearby you or close, at least within reach. And the other thing too is these days, maybe one blessing of COVID was it allowed us all to practice telemedicine with a little more confidence.
Yep.
And so a lot of this is ideally suited for that.
Yes.
Sometimes you may need to see them initially or something, but boy, it's very easily managed remotely. Yeah.
Yeah. So since COVID came out 2 years ago, about 50% of my practice is on the phone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's because, once I've seen my patient face to face, I have patients from all over, from several different states. They're not going to come here every time they need an appointment, right?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because there will be people who are interested in knowing, are you taking new patients, and can you see them? Are there limitations on what states you can see patients from?
So I have to see them face to face. Because of COVID, that has been allowed to be through telehealth if needed. So I have done that a couple of times.
And that's mainly because there's usually some testosterone involved, which is a controlled substance. Is that correct?
I guess so. I mean, I think for most medical experiences, you need to have established care face to face.
Yeah, you'll see differences of opinion on that.
That it's just controlled substances or not.
Well, I know that's what led to it, because it did require a face to face.
Yes.
But anyway, you're right. That was lifted from COVID,
Yes.
and I think they'll begin to see that. Okay, maybe we'd swung a little too far the other way, and
Right.
it's good that we went through this and we saw there wasn't this massive abuse.
Right.
But it delivered health care to people that wouldn't have gotten it.
Right.
Because they weren't in proximity.
Right.
Time is an issue. People are busy. No reason.
They can't always do it. And so it's in my line, like, I need to see them. I like to see them face to face. That's more enjoyable for me as a practitioner, to see somebody in person. But I don't mind doing them on the phone. And so, I have handouts and pictures in my office that are always nice, but we don't have to do that every time, And so people who live in Park City, or people who live down in St. George, or wherever they are, if they want to come once a year and see me and do the rest of the follow-ups on the phone, that's just fine. And it's trained, COVID has trained all of us to know that that's okay. Mm-hmm. We can talk on the phone. We can do a telehealth video conference if we want to, and that's okay to do. And it's really worked out.
And I think that's been a real blessing to come from this, if there is such a thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think there is.
Yeah.
So there's always good that comes from challenges, and delivering this and getting this accessible to people is just critical. And it's good for people to know, look, if this costs you a plane trip, to get you connected with the right person that understands this is well worth a plane ticket.
Right. And at this point, they don't even have to do that.
Right.
We can do
right.
it. I do require...
That yet after the state, what is it, state of emergency that I don't think they've lifted it yet.
I haven't heard any...
It came from the DEA.
Yeah, so I haven't heard them lift it, but at this point, I'm requiring a face-to-face, which can include a telehealth conference, meaning a video conference, right? That's for the first visit, and then we take it from there. And some people I will say, I need you to come into my office for this next visit, or some people I'm like, nope, you're totally fine to stay on the phone, which people are busy and there's traffic and people don't want to drive, people don't want to take 2 hours out of their day all the time. So just to get to a place and then get back, right? And some people do. So everybody's an individual, and that speaks to the whole precision thing. Whatever's going to work best for that patient, that's what I try to help them with, because logistics can be difficult.
Yeah, they can. definitely, and they can get in the way of healthcare and therefore good health. So, is this within reach of most people financially? Do you feel?
I feel like I feel like it depends on the experience that they're expecting. Okay, it can get really pricey and it can be more affordable, and it kind of depends on if they're wanting really precision and a lot of time spent, or if they're wanting, a quick in and out. And so there are practitioners who do a good job with a quick in and out with simple cases. If they're more complicated cases, it's not going to be so quick. So the answer to that question is, I don't think there's an answer to that question. I think that's one of the biggest problems in healthcare is accessibility.
Okay, yeah.
Right.
So maybe it depends?
Yes, it depends. And it depends on what people value in many cases, because...
So what would you consider the scope of what someone could have done and qualify as a quick in and out?
A quick in and out?
I mean, I know you have a spectrum of things that you do in your practice, and it involves, like as you mentioned, functional medicine, other body systems. If someone needs just to start out and get their hormones properly tuned up, is it tiered at all to?
In my practice, it's not. In my practice, it's we really look at the whole body, but I know that there are practices that are, so we've tried to tier it, but people always bring in all of their fatigue and their depression and their anxiety and their insomnia. They bring it in, and so we have not successfully tiered it, So it's kind of a flat fee. In my office, we don't take insurance for the visits because we spend an hour, right? And insurance will not pay for an hour.
And that's where I would say is the difference, and then that helps people understand what you mean by it depends.
It does depend.
Because that hour or 2 hours, there's no insurance plan that's going to pay.
Right.
That's going to pay for.
So if somebody wants really personalized, very unique precision health solutions, they're not going to get that in an insurance paid visit because insurance does not pay for that.
Okay, so do you entertain an initial visit or a consult fee that then they can decide if they need to go on with you?
Yes, I do that.
Okay.
With every patient. They come in for their 2-hour initial consultation with me. Right now it's $695 for that 2 hours, which if you think about it, most doctors' offices are billing out probably $600 to $1,000 an hour, right, per practitioner. I'm sure the doctor I saw last night is billing out $1,200 an hour, right? And so we're billing out about $350. And so that's probably the bare minimum just to keep the lights on at the practice, So I see them for 2 hours, and then at the end of it, we decide, is this something that you feel like you need to move forward with? And I have a lot of patients who say, my son is going on a mission or my daughter's going off to college and I'd like to have a once over. And can we do that? And I'm like, yes, we can see if there are any problems, or if I can say, hey, you should be taking this supplement, or, whatever. And they don't have to become long-term patients, So yes, it's a decision. And at my practice, we don't have contracts or anything like that. If they want to be our patients, then they pay us, and if they don't, they don't.
So can they call your staff and sort of briefly describe their situation and get any indication from that, or is that just not really enough?
I think so, yeah. Okay. Yes. My staff is pretty well trained in hormonal problems and whether or not that's something that we can help them with. Okay. Yeah.
All right. But yeah, I don't want, one of the things that I don't think either one of us wants is for people to be priced out of this. It's just it's not right, and it's not, I don't know if I like to use the term fair, but it's not right that people can't have access to this because the medical establishment says we're not going to pay for that because it doesn't line up with what we think.
Right.
Anyway, I think people are kind of getting used to that a little bit with high copays.
Right.
But it's a reality. But I can tell you, boy, if you get with the right person, that kind of money is so well spent.
Right.
Because it's going to answer questions for you. It'll launch you off in the direction you need to go. and it's not going to continue to be that much.
Right. And I mean, they see it with the high deductibles too. You know, most people are paying their deductible for 4 minutes here and 4 minutes there, right? And they're reaching their whole deductible, whereas for a fraction of that deductible, they can pay for an hour or two of time.
And they may argue, well, that won't get applied to my deductible,
Right.
and they may be right.
Right.
In some cases, they do on some of these like Christian plans, but even if it isn't, I tell you what I see a lot, and I have a pretty good view of this. I would say the majority of people don't meet it.
Right. They don't meet their deductibles.
So if you're not meeting that deductible every year,
What's
if it's
the point?
10,000 or 7,000, what's the point? Yeah, you decide how you're going to spend it then.
Right.
That's really what that's saying.
Right. Right. So if you have a high deductible, then you get a health savings plan,
Yeah.
right? And then it becomes tax deductible, right? And that's a big discount right there.
It is.
And you spend your medical money the way you want it spent instead of to a middleman at the insurance company.
Right. Yep. And then the cost of the prescriptions, I can just in a broad statement say that they're very often covered. Don't let a pharmacy tell you compounds aren't covered. Go to a compounding pharmacy that bills frequently for hormone prescriptions on insurance plans, and make sure that you hear it from them, somebody that knows how to do it, because it's a complicated process, unfortunately. But a lot of these things don't have to be compounded. They're available commercially made, and they're still in this field that we call bioidentical. That's the safer choice in hormones that you were referring to earlier.
As a generic copay.
With a generic copay.
Right.
Yeah. So it does not have to be. I can say it doesn't have to be expensive from the pharmacy perspective. In fact, what I say is, insurance or not, an overall average, I would say per hormone, $30 a month is a good rough guess.
Yeah.
And it could be much less, and it could be more, but that's without any insurance at all.
Right.
So it's not out of reach, and the quality of life that it brings is just absolutely amazing. And sometimes people need to really suffer in order to recognize that.
Right. and then they recognize it, and then they send all their friends.
Yep. And they come back and say, oh, okay, you were right.
Why did I suffer that for so long?
Well, thank you. This has been enlightening, and I think people will find it informing. There are a lot of questions around this, and one of the things I wanted to accomplish is, how do I find somebody that can do this for me? I'm finding more people are better informed about it, but they still don't know where to go.
Right.
So this has been great. I think there's been a lot of good information for people to know what to expect and where to look.
Right. And I think to answer that question is, a lot of times, go to your compounding pharmacist and ask.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. They're going to know locally who's doing it.
Yeah.
And then you can.
And who's doing a good job with it.
Right.
Right.
Yep, they are. Yep. So you're the best.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.